It's late, well after the rest of the house has gone to sleep, when Donald and Douglas slip out for the second time, using the age-old trick of tying their bedsheets together. They climb out their window. When they return sometime later, it's with a very sleepy Eva and Leia in tow. Then, in the morning, they wait until they can hear their mother awake in her room to creep down the stairs and into the living room. There's a big Christmas tree in the front of the window, decorated elegantly in white and gold. The boys don't fail to notice that there are rather more gifts under it than there had been the previous day, or that there are 3 extra stockings lined up over the fireplace alongside the first one. Rosie stares up at the one with her name on it in swirly gold lettering, while Donald and Douglas sit Eva and Leia down in front of the tree. They each wear a new dress similar to Rosie's with matching bows in their hair. Eva's is in purple, while Leia's is in blue, as both girls had vehemently refused to wear red, even after the boys had explained to them that it was a popular Christmas color. "There, now you stay there, all right?" Donald tells them as Douglas adjusts their bows. They don't seem too thrilled about this plan, though. "Don't leave," Leia whispers, gripping Douglas' sleeve tightly. They had told the girls of their grandmother's presents before bringing them, and it had served only to make them more nervous, although they must have wanted to meet their mother, since they hadn't refused to come. "Dinna fast, you two. We willna go far," they promise. A few minutes later, their mother catches them lingering suspiciously at the bottom of the stairs, trying to look casual. "What are you 3 doing there?" she asks, eyebrow raised. The boys shift and glance subtly at each other. Nothing? Nothing at all." Regina narrows her eyes. "I see," she says, looking between them. Rosie giggles behind her hands. "We didn't do anything. Only got..." Donald grabs her and tickles her silly before she can give the entire thing away. "What did we tell you about telling secrets, lassie?" "No, no!" she squeals as she tries to escape the sudden tickle attack. When she does, she runs away into the living room, still laughing. Regina turns to her boys, one eyebrow raised. "What did you do?" "I dinna ken what you mean, lass," says Donald. But they're both grinning, too broadly for it to possibly be believable. In the living room, they can hear Rosie talking, which makes Regina frown. "Who's she talking to in there?" "What? I didn't hear any talking," says Douglas, but he can barely keep his face straight. "You're hiding something." The boys lean against the wall, still grinning. "If we were hiding something, we'd be stopping you from going in there, wouldn't we?" They have her there. She walks down the hall in the living room, with them trailing knowingly behind her. "Rosie?" she calls, as she steps in, and then she freezes. All the breath she has escapes in a sharp gasp, and she stands in the doorway, lips parted and eyes wide. There is a moment in which she turns to them, as if in slow motion, eyes questioning like she wants to speak, and then she faints. "Whoa, shit!" Douglas hisses. The slow motion seems to speed up into near time-lapse as he, closer, closes the distance between them and catches her before she hits the ground, all in one fluid motion. He lowers her to the floor, and they kneel beside her, and it's different, they note, than it had been with them, or with Rosie. But then Eva and Leia are the daughters of the man she had loved, her last piece of him thought lost. Maybe she had seen him in them, and known. A few minutes later, when Regina comes to, she finds herself laying on the floor surrounded by 5 concerned faces. "Are you all right, lass?" "Christ, maybe we should have sat you down and then brought them in," says Donald. "I'm fine," she replies, sitting up and looking around, as if to make sure everyone is accounted for. Or maybe she's just looking for the 2 little faces she's sure she imagined. Her eyes lock onto them, climbing around Donald like little monkeys. They pause and peer at her shyly from behind their brother. Did I hit my head? Regina asks, touching her head carefully. This can't be real. They can't be here. They're dead. Logically speaking, none of them should be here. No, says Donald. Dougie caught you. Aye, Douglas confirms, sitting against the wall on the other side of her. I didn't think I've moved that fast since he'd found Donald cut too deep and only half conscious, bleeding out from his own self-inflicted wounds, he thinks darkly. Nothing has ever scared him more than that. Since we found the wee lassies frozen stiff and half dead at the stones, I'll bet, Donald supplies. Clearly, he knows just what unpleasant memory has cropped up in his brother's mind. They came through the stones too? Regina asks. The boys nod, and she chokes on a sob. My mother lied to me. They weren't stillborn? Aye, you're right about that, says Douglas, but she didn't send them through the stones. They went through of their own accord when they were older. Regina turns to the twin girls, surprised. You did? Why? They have tucked themselves comfortably into Donald's lap and are playing with each other's long hair. Aye, says Eva, quietly. We wanted to be away, says Leia. And the stones are good for that. Regina frowns. The stones. Is that why your ages are all wrong? She asks, realizing. They should really all be older than they apparently are. Donald and Douglas look to be about 17 or so. Eva and Leia, who should be a year older than them, don't look older than Rosie, who's definitely under 10. For her, including the curse, they had all been born decades ago. Taking a closer look at Eva and Leia, all beautiful black curls and brown and blue mixed-matched eyes and pale skin, she notices how tiny they are, how thin and frail and bony they are. There's nothing to them. Her heart breaks. If they are older than Rosie, then Rosie is certainly healthier. I ken what you're thinking, says Donald, having seen the look on her face as her eyes train on the girls. The girls didn't look their ages. Eva and Leia are about 12. They've had a very rough go. Rosie is 9. All three are undersized. For Rosie, it's not so bad. For Eva and Leia, it's rather more severe. Aye, Douglas agrees. They're getting stronger all the time, though. We documented their improvement on our phone. It was incredible, really. The boys had one phone between them, which they had saved up for after taking in the girls, as a safety precaution. But you're right about the stones, Donald went on. They cast us forward through time, as well as space. That's what Eva and Leia said, anyway. He looks down at his sisters and cuddles them close. That's right, no, Mopedikin? Eva nods, looking between him and their mother. The time we landed in was not parallel to the one we left, in the realm we left. We, all of us in 3 different trips, landed in 3 different times, decades ahead of the ones we left, Leia adds. And they so love to talk of magic. Donnie and Dougie and Rosie landed 8 years apart, but still decades ahead of the time they left, so their age gap stayed as it was. But Eva and I, the stones dropped us in a time where Donnie and Dougie are older than us, so they could find and care for us. Otherwise, we would almost surely have died. No, just that, Donald put in, half to his mother, half to his sisters. You came at a time when we needed you just as much as you needed us, he says, pressing kisses to their dark curls. Regina, meanwhile, sits taking all this in, until a thought strikes her. The thing. Pardon? Douglas frowns. His siblings look similarly confused. Yesterday, you said you weren't adopted because you needed to be at a certain place at a certain time to do a certain thing, she explains. It was them, wasn't it? Finding them at the stones? Aye, 'twas, and if we went back with the knowing of what would happen and were given the choice, we'd choose them every time. Their lives are worth more than any potential happiness in an adoptive family, and every bit of hardship we had to go through to get to them. There's a pause. Regina lets out a sob and wipes at her tears. The boys inch closer. "Och, lass, we didna mean..." Before they can finish, she drags them into a bone-crushing hug with the girls squeezed between them. "My sweet boys, I love you." "We love you too, Ma'am, even though we just met you," they reply. She pulls back, hands on their arms. "You know what you are?" They look back quizzically. Human?" She laughs. "Selfless and brave and so true. Everything your father never was." Their cheeks go pink with the praise. "We try," they say. Several minutes later, Cora comes down the stairs to find them all still there, embracing and somewhat fawning over the girls. She frowns. "What are you all doing on the floor? We have chairs, you know. Not to mention that big sofa I can see from here," she says. Eva and Leia stiffen, their blood turning to ice. They push away from Regina, try to push away from their brothers, and likely would have run from the house entirely had they the ability. As it is, they stumble on unsteady legs in their effort and fall, to be caught by their brothers. "Dinna fash a fewer, ha shin an sho, ha hu savilcha," Donald speaks, switching to Gaelic as he does. Eva clings to him, and he wraps his arms protectively around her, smoothing his hands over her soft curls and rocking her gently. She whimpers and reaches out a bony hand. "Mo fewer," she wants Leia. "Mo fewer," she cries, curled into a tense little ball in Donald's lap. "Ha Leia ceart guléir," he responds, but then switches back to English when he sees Regina looking confused and worried. "Dougie has her. She's safe, lass. Dinna fash." This is true. Douglas shifts over to sit beside his brother with Leia in his lap. The girls immediately reach for each other and latch hands, seeking comfort in their other half. Regina stares between her daughters and her mother. "What's wrong? Are they all right?" "I dinna ken," says Douglas. He and Donald glare daggers at Cora. "Are they?" Donald says to Cora, his voice laced with both the heat of a challenge and the icy drought of a threat. "Of course," she responds. "I gave you my word, did I not?" They both get to their feet with the girl still in arm and stand to meet her eyes, testing. "I dinna believe your word is worth an awful lot," Douglas grinds out. "If you want us to trust it, then give us reason." Perhaps to everyone's shock, then, Cora backs down. "I'll put breakfast on, shall I?" "Aye, you do that." Neither of the boys move until she's disappeared into the kitchen. As she does, Rosie peeks out from behind her brothers, eyes narrowed. They have told her about what their grandmother had done to Eva and Leia, and she's none too pleased that her sisters have to deal with seeing her again in order to meet their mother. Under her breath, she mutters something unpleasant in the Gaelic. "I want you to tell me what that was about." They are back in the living room now, Cora out of earshot in the kitchen, and Regina stands, facing the boys, with her arms crossed. Donald and Douglas stare back, still on guard. "I dinna ken what you mean, lass," says Donald. There's a note of finality in his voice, but she ignores it. "Yes, you do. You've been giving her the cold shoulder since you got here. You've only known her for a couple of days, and you're acting as if she's eaten your porridge. You've never even met her before," she exclaims, and then stops as a horrible thought enters her mind. "Have you?" "We havena," says Douglas. He motions to Eva and Leia, still clinging to their brothers. The boys had tried to set them down on the sofa, but the girls had refused to let go of them. "They have." What? When?" Regina questions. She remembers the looks of terror on her daughters' faces when her mother had walked in. "What did she do?" she asks slowly. The boys move around to sit down and settle their sisters in their laps, cuddling them and rubbing soothing circles over their backs. "Fine," says Donald, "but you willna like it, so dinna say we didna warn ye." Regina sits with them. "Tell me, I need to know." So they do, explaining about Wonderland, about finding the girls half frozen, starved and beaten at the stone circle. By the end, she's crying, heartbroken all over again. Eva and Leia finally let go of their brothers and crawl into her lap instead, resting their heads on her chest. She hugs them tight. "Don't cry, Mama. Donnie and Dougie saved us. They see us warm and fed and safe. We're okay now," they say, and they speak in the most adorable mix of Scots and an unfamiliar accent she assumes comes from Wonderland. This only makes her cry harder. "Oh, my babies, I love you." She cups their cheeks in her hands as they look up at her. "You are so beautiful. Did you know that?" Leia giggles shyly. "Yes. We used to think we were not. Donnie and Dougie say we're bonny. You think so too?" Regina sobs. "Of course I do. You are so perfect." She wipes at her eyes then and moves to get up, shifting the girls off her lap. "But I need to speak to my mother. I'll be back." Douglas stops her with a hand on her arm. "Dinna fash about that now, ma'am. You can take her out behind the woodshed later if it suits you, but for now, we should focus on the girls. 'Tis Eva and Leia's first proper Christmas, and Rosie's last one was when she was 3. They deserve a very special one now, don't you think?" She does, and so she settles back down and they open gifts and have breakfast, and they spend the rest of the day together, getting to know each other better and playing with the girls. By that evening, Eva and Leia are worn out. Freshly bathed, they doze peacefully as Donald and Douglas brush and plait their lovely long dark hair. When Regina peeks in, the sight melts her heart. She still can't get over how gentle her boys are with their sisters. They clearly adore them and are very used to doing the caregiving. They look up and she smiles as she steps into the room. "Who taught you how to braid?" It takes them a minute to register the unfamiliar term before Douglas speaks. "One of the foster homes we were in had 4 biological daughters. We were their first foster kids and they didn't have any boy stuff yet, so we just played with the girls. They liked to play dolls and insisted on teaching us how to plait their hair," he explains. Regina can't stop herself from chuckling at the image of the 2 wild Highlanders playing dolls with a bunch of little girls. "What's so funny?" Donald asks as she comes over and sits on the edge of the bed. "I just can't quite imagine you playing with dolls," she says, and runs a hand along the long black plait of Eva's hair. Eva sighs sleepily, one eye cracking open. "You have such beautiful hair, my love," she adds softly. Donald smiles. They do. "Is Rosie in bed then?" "Yes. We'll see if she stays in her own bed tonight." "Aye," Douglas agrees, "though you canna blame the lass. We're used to sleeping all together in one room," he says, thinking of their nest of blankets in the engine cab. "Here," he goes on, maneuvering Leia in his lap. "Why don't you take Leia and tell her good night?" Leia blinks, jolted awake by the movement. She yawns, face against the crook of her brother's neck, and tries to keep her eyes open. Regina takes her and cradles her head against her chest, stroking her thumb over her cheek and kissing her forehead. Leia finds her hand and clutches it to her chest. "We wanted you for so long, but we couldn't have you," she breathes tiredly. "Good night, Mama." Regina sniffles tearfully at that and presses her nose into her sweet girl's hair. "I dreamed of you," she looks up, "all of you. And when I woke, my heart would break all over again, for I felt your loss again as if it were fresh." But here they are, all 5 of the babies she'd carried to term, but still were lost to her, here and whole and home.